What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I am an herbalist and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, thank you so much for being here. I super appreciate all of y'all who show up every week, who show up every day, who send me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, who hit this little save button here in the corner, who send it to a friend. Thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for joining the membership. Thank you for checking out the music. There's some new music on the way. I'm so hyped. Thank you for being a part of this community. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this month, or this week, is a pretty, we get some pretty big stuff, some pretty, important, significant shifts take place. So the first one that we need to take a look at here is happening today, actually, and it is Venus and Mars are moving from Capricorn into Aquarius. So we've had Venus in Capricorn for like 4 months now. It's been Venus in Capricorn forever and a day. I'm tired myself. It's been because we had that Venus retrograde, right? So Venus came up to the very end of Capricorn in December, stationed retrograde, closely conjunct Pluto, and then moved back for a while. And then after Venus stationed direct toward the beginning of Capricorn, started moving forward again. Then Mars moved into Capricorn, and then it was kind of the both of them hanging out together, tracking through Capricorn. They're going to continue to hang out together as they both enter Aquarius, and then are going to hang out and be closely side by side for a long time still, So that's kind of the journey that we've been on up to this point. With like Venus and Capricorn, we've been looking at I've been thinking deeply about power dynamics, and I've been thinking about, with Pluto being there, I've been thinking about subterranean or underground or underworld or secretive or hidden activities. These kinds of things I've been thinking about. The desires that really matter, that are really that might be under the surface, but that are actually kind of moving the things. All of this kind of stuff, been thinking about obsession and jealousy and addiction, and all this sort of stuff has been really, really loud, at least for me. And also my clients, I've been talking to a lot of people who have engaged a lot of these kinds of themes, really just trying to get clear on what we really want. A lot of times a Venus retrograde will show you what you don't like, will give you some things that you don't like, and that will help you to get clearer on what you do actually want, right? We saw that story. Now, as Venus moves out of Capricorn, we can finally sort of put that, we learned our thing, and maybe we don't need to do that particular thing anymore. And I'm grateful for just that. Just that is pretty dope in a lot of ways. Now, what is going to happen is that Mars and Venus move into Aquarius and are going to conjoin at 0 degrees of Aquarius. Now, 0 degrees of Aquarius, this is a very interesting degree of late. We have had, so in late 2020, we had the great conjunction there. We had Saturn and Jupiter conjunct at 0 degrees of Aquarius. That was a very big deal. We had, a little bit before that, we had Saturn and Mars conjunct at 0 degrees of Aquarius. That was in, I think, late March of 2020. So we can see how that was a big deal. So the way that I've been describing that, you can also check, I've been talking about this for a long time. I did a talk called The Great Conjunction, I think. It's on YouTube. I also did a talk called Toward Relational Metaphysics in the Era of Air, also free on YouTube. Both of those things talk about this point. Basically, what I said in longer form in those talks was that we have entered a new era of history. There's a 200-year cycle, which ended in 2020, at the end of 2020, and another 200-year cycle, which began at the end of 2020, right? At that moment of the Great Conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So in that moment, Saturn and Jupiter sort of began the new reality, wherein data is the new coal, wherein information is supreme, is the way of generating power and money and these kinds of things, right? Information matters most at this point in the timeline, right? And so we've been thinking about that in a structural kind of way, the way that we sort of engage in society at large. We've seen a lot of sort of societal crumbling and this kind of stuff. We've seen rumblings looking like, there's all this sort of empire dynamic going on right now. It's not really looking good for mega empires right now in the world and these kinds of things, right? So we've thought about that on that big global kind of level. Now what we see with Venus and Mars moving into that place, Venus and Mars are our passion planets, right? Those are planets that Venus is very much about love and desire and attraction and harmony and things like this. Venus cares very much. Venus wants it to feel good. And so that's typically how we think about Venus, as being a benefic and sort of makes things feel good. But the way that it feels, the sensory engagement with the thing, is very much the way that Venus sort of like comes through in the psyche, right? Then Mars is the other one. Mars is also a planet of passion and desire, but in this way, Mars tends to want to like move forward and try to get the thing. Venus will try to attract whatever Venus desires. Mars will try to chase whatever it desires, right? And so with this in mind, we've got this like heart-centered or self-centered perhaps, you know, and so you say self-centered and it sounds mean, but there's a certain sense of like, what is going on with me? Because it might not be immediately clear how I think or how I feel or whatever, right? So what is going on with me and my own passions and desires? Where is my skin in the game when it comes to this larger societal situation that's going on here? We've got the breakup of empire or whatever happening. And then what does that mean for me? And not only like, so the way that I was thinking about this yesterday was like, what's that got to do with me? You know? And so there's a couple of ways to think about that. Like literally, what does that have to do with me? Probably it has something to do with me. I live here. And so there's, you know, it's going to have some kind of impact. But at the same time, I also am where I am. You know what I mean? I'm not in Eastern Europe, for example. I'm not, you know, like I'm not deep in the boardrooms, and I don't work for Pfizer, nothing like this, right? Like I'm not in any of these spaces. Instead, I am where I am. And so whatever is going on in the, you know, with these like larger breakup of whatever, you know, whatever's going on here, what does that have to do with me? And sort of engaging that question and getting into that, and finding where that intersection is. Where is my skin actually in the game? And when I find that place, then I can push on that. That's what really matters to me. And that's where sort of my personal field connects with the larger collective, right? And so really digging into that is likely to be a very big situation for us moving into the week ahead. So I've talked too long about that because there's more stuff to talk about. The other thing that's going on is Mercury is moving into Pisces this week. So we've had Mercury in Aquarius for a little while. Mercury is very good in Aquarius, cold, analytical, able to do the Mercury sort of like, I was going to say divisive, but I don't mean it in a mean way. I mean it more like sort of like sorting, right? Mercury is really good for sorting things and filing stuff and like putting things into, dividing things into the little categories in order to make them intelligible, right? Mercury is very good at doing this in Aquarius, especially there with Saturn, who is very good at making things cold and dry. Cold and dry things are much easier to put into boxes than things that are hot and wet, right? So Mercury's been in Aquarius for a little while. Now Mercury is actually going to move into Pisces. So this is a situation which is typically thought of as detriment, fall. It's a debilitation. It's a weakness for Mercury, right? This is the way that we think about it, because Pisces is opposite to Virgo. Mercury rules Virgo. Mercury does really well in Virgo, feels comfortable in that environment. In Pisces, Mercury is as far from home as possible. And so we can think about this as being difficult for Mercury to do the thing. Now, I've been thinking about this a lot recently as well. And I think it's important to remember that as far as speaking and expressing and being clearly understood, that becomes really difficult with Mercury in Pisces, or Mercury in any of the water signs. These are in the Hellenistic text, like I think Serapio, for example, calls Mercury in a water sign mute, like not saying the words, right? And so so if Mercury's job is to express and to communicate, then how does Mercury then accomplish that goal if Mercury is mute? And so there's something here that I think is really important about listening, about not saying something all the time. You don't necessarily have to have an opinion, right? There's a lot of complex, very difficult stuff going on in the world. This, this larger situation that's going on. We've got a whole brand new world. We live in the future now. What does it mean to live in the future? What does it mean to be an institution in the future? How to, what kind of responsibilities go with that? All that sort of stuff, right? We live in the future now, and maybe I have some skin in the game here and I feel some kind of way about it, but my skin in the game only goes to a certain point. And so things that are beyond that point, do I need to involve myself in? Do I need to have an opinion about that? Do I need to have a shouting match about that? And so if we think about other ways of engaging, then, maybe we don't need to be in the shouting match about it. Maybe there's some listening that can take place here. And I don't mean listening like listening to someone else shout at you, right? That I mean much more in the sense of like ancestral veneration. The other day I was talking with BXB, with Lindsay from BXB on a live. This is in the feed somewhere recently, So in that talk, we were talking about ancestral veneration. We were talking about that alongside the Pluto situation that's going on in Capricorn, Venus, Pluto, and all this, Pluto return, all these kinds of things. And in that context, we were talking about ancestral veneration and how like even people who are adopted, for example, and who don't necessarily know their bio family can still come and be among their relations, which is where I am right now, right? I'm among my relations and know that the plants are the elders, the plants are the ancestors, right? And so if we are, and so that there's that, right? And even if you do know your bio ancestry or whatever it is, then you can still be in that space. And really, when we get to ancestral veneration, it's much more about listening than it is about speaking. They don't need me to tell them anything. You know what I mean? They are already dead. They are already passed on. They are the ones who have the wisdom, who have this outside perspective that might be good for me to know, right? And so there's something here about listening and listening to things that are not necessarily easily discernible or easily intelligible. With Mercury in Pisces, we get a lot of stuff, and Neptune is here also. Jupiter is here also. We get a lot of things around like symbols, metaphors. Mercury in Pisces is very good with poetry. Doesn't do as well with prose, but does a really good job with song, does a really good job with melody. Shouts out to Maya Angelou, the fucking poet laureate who had Mercury in Pisces, right? She went on to be a great orator with a detriment or with a debilitated Mercury, right? So I encourage us not to think about this Mercury as like a bummer, right? Because we can think about Mercury in Pisces and be like, oh, it's bad essential dignity. You shouldn't make a talisman or some shit like that, right? But I think that there's a lot of really important wisdom to be had if we would but listen. And with that in mind, I'm going to shut my trap. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you so much. I super appreciate everybody who is a part of this community and all this. We have some really, really big things coming up in April. It's about to go down for the Zamboni Funk Enterprise. So thank y'all for being here. Thank you for riding the spaceship with me. And I look forward to seeing y'all next time. Bye.